Hello and thanks for joining me on the program. I am Adeshewa Josh. We are already midway into the year 2015 and a lot has happened across board, economically and politically, within several sectors of the economy. Now, you will agree with me that most organizations at this time will normally go back to the drawing board to see how far they have come in terms of set goals and how well or badly projects have been implemented, so they can be better positioned before the end of their financial year. The Bank of Industry has been doing this and more, reviewing strategies in order to serve you better by creating liquidity of opportunities for entrepreneurs, for both startups and existing conglomerates. So, here's what happened over the weekend. The MD of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa, and his team took out time to meet with stakeholders to discuss plans the development institution has for the future, including upgrading its operational processes to global best practices in a bid to serve you better.
So now we've developed a new set of vision, mission, goals and objectives, core values and all that. Now, what is our new mission? Our new vision statement is that we want to be Africa's leading development finance institution operating under global best practices. We don't want to just be a leader anyhow. No, we want to be a leader, but doing things right, doing the right things in the right way.
In the agricultural sector, due to limited processing and preservation capacity. This results in high food prices and food importation, with its attendant effects on the nation's foreign reserves. To enable Nigerians optimize the benefits from the country's vast agricultural products such as cassava, oil palm, rice, tomatoes and others, the Bank of Industry has launched a 5 billion naira cottage agro-processing fund, the CAP Fund. Customers can access the fund to establish plans to process our various agro-produce into food products or intermediate raw materials for industries at a single-digit interest rate of 9% per annum. For more information on the CAP Fund, please visit www.boinigeria.com/capfund. Bank of Industry, developing Nigeria's agro-processing industry through the CAP Fund.
When Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa took over the reins of power at the Bank of Industry last year, many markets watchers knew the game will change, based on his backlog of success as an astute banker. You will recall I spoke with him shortly after he took office about what the future holds for the engine of our nation's potentially vibrant manufacturing sector in the face of a global dwindling price of oil and his plans for growing the bank's reputation in Africa.
What we're trying to do is twofold. First, we want to adopt global best practices in a number of areas, in terms of governance, in terms of risk management practices, in terms of compliance, in terms of customer service, in terms of a number of areas. And secondly, we want to increase the amount of impact that we make in the society.
A number of stakeholders were always complaining that
Months after, he is already steering the team towards the new directions he spoke to me about at the interview. Here, Mr. Olaoluwa presents to stakeholders at a retreat in Lagos the bank's directory for more developmental impact.
So I identified a number of items, corporate good governance, even as an outsider, looking out before my appointment. I believe that a number of stakeholders were always complaining that it takes a long time, from application to approval to get a loan processed through BOI. How can we get staff more productive? Can we initiate and develop new products? Can we ensure that we recover all our loans? How can we optimize our assets? And how can we ensure that there are no income leakages? And then effective branding and communication. So we had these 15 items on the agenda, which I will classify into two broad categories. The first one is, how can BOI make an impact? Because that's the essence of our being. That is our purpose, our mission. How can we make an impact? The second broad objective is, how can we adopt global best practices? Because all the other banks that we've looked at, from Brazil to India to Malaysia to even Africa, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, the leading DFIs have a few things in common. And if we are going to become a leading DFI, we also need to begin to do what they do.
After dotting the I's and crossing the T's, through drawing inferences from other highly sophisticated development banks around the world, Mr. Olaoluwa then began to reel out the strategies to put BOI on the map.
The first thing in this kind of institution is governance, very important. If you talk to any international development finance institution, the first thing they will mention is governance. How is the institution governed? How is the institution run? Is it run as a court? Is it run under the table? Or is it run transparently, that everyone can see what is going on? So it was important that our board was inaugurated on the 15th of July last year, and we got to work immediately. We developed a robust board charter. That board charter has provision for board committees. So at BOI today, we have 4 board committees. A board committee for finance and general purpose, for credit and investment, for audit, and for risk and governance. These committees have been very active. They meet quarterly. They look at all aspects of BOI's operation. We make full disclosures to these committees. And our directors are also being trained just to ensure that they can understand our language.
After rolling out the new effective structure and values BOI will be running with, it's now time to talk business.
We have the Large Enterprise Directorate, which we have realigned with the National Industrial Plan. And the National Industrial Plan itself emerged from there was a report that was issued in 2013 by the UN Economic Commission for Africa, which advocated commodity-based industrialization for African economies. In other words, you have natural resources, you have commodities. Can you add value to them, before you export? So instead of exporting raw agricultural products, can you process them locally? Instead of mineral excavation and exporting, can you do beneficiation? Can you process the minerals? Instead of just exporting crude, can you refine? Can you set up fertilizer plants? Can you set up petrochemical plants, and so on and so forth? So this is what we have restructured our Large Enterprise Directorate to focus on. Just to mention 2 sectors that we have looked at, cottage agro-processing. Because we know that not everybody wants to do 1 billion naira, 500 million naira to do rice processing and all that. There are small-scale companies that just need 10 million, 20 million to set up a small cassava processing plant, palm oil processing plant, and so on and so forth. Can we not support them? And we have created a product. Now, that product does not require bank guarantee. That product does not require legal mortgage. It's there, it's available, and people are started applying, and they are being processed.
Again, the MD took out time to answer the most asked question by many entrepreneurs, especially those just starting out.
People always ask me, what does it take to get a loan from BOI? And I say, okay, you know what? We need to put this information in the public space so that people know that, this transparency, we really want people to appreciate it. That these are the conditions. These are the eligibility criteria, we call them.
So these are the eligibility criteria for all seeking funds from the Bank of Industry. Small, medium, and large enterprises, including cottage agro-processors through the CAP Fund, new or existing companies seeking expansion, modernization, or diversification, credit-worthy promoters who will be required to prove their commitment to the project by contributing at least 25% of the project cost, excluding land. Borrowers whose management capability, financial situation, including availability of collateral and guarantee, character and reputation are incontrovertible. Clients with demonstrable ability to meet loan repayments. And finally, borrowers with no record of unpaid loans to erstwhile development finance institutions and other banks. If you fall within the above criteria, then you may be asking how to apply. Here is how. Write a formal application letter. Step 2. Complete BOI's questionnaire. You can either pick it up online at www.boinigeria.com or visit any of the offices closest to you. And lastly, submit your forms and questionnaire.
We remain committed to the pursuit of our core mandate of providing long-term financial support to small, medium, and large enterprises and projects in Nigeria. And as we are doing so, we are also going to continue to adopt global best practices.
So, how well has the small and medium enterprises sector fared since Mr. Rasheed Olaoluwa resumed office? Let's hear from the Executive Director of Small and Medium Enterprises of the Bank of Industry.
In terms of figures, as of today, under the agro processing, we have 73 projects we are managing was 82 billion. And we have that 82 billion and some 3 projects have created a job of about 63,000.
To be able to do that, the Bank of Industry has set up more offices across the states to enable easy access for all loan applications.
The regional offices were reorganized and strengthened, some of them in line with the growth poles of the various regions. For example, Southwest region used to be based in Akure, but it was moved to Ibadan. As we all know, the Southwest economy is driven more from Ibadan. Same thing for South-South. It used to be in Asaba. It's moved to Port Harcourt now. And I'll go to the state office as well. We've increased our representation by more than 100% across the country. We used to have 7 offices. We now have 14 offices. And the next state office will be located in Cross River State. This was approved yesterday by the MD. That was in response to an offer made by the governor-elect, who has not yet been sworn in, but has started working. That's an indication that our politicians are becoming more accountable to the people. He knows that once he resumes, his people will start pressurizing him. And in that letter to the MD, he says he wants jobs created for his people. He wants developmental impact to trigger. And he's a senator-elect, he's a serving senator, governor-elect, where he has started working. So yesterday, the MD sent a message through his envoy that our next state office will be located in Cross River. And that was something that Osun government did as well. We didn't plant an office in Osun this year, but the governor offered us free accommodation in Osun. That's why the opportunity was seized. The same thing with the governor-elect is offering us free accommodation in Calabar as soon as he gets sworn in. We hope this message can be sent around such that more governors can be more responsive to the needs of their people. And that governor said it was inspired by the impact that BOI has made working with other state governments.
Also, Mr. Waheed Olaguju revealed another milestone achievement of the Bank of Industry during his presentation about working capital for SMEs.
We give long and medium-term funds at 10% average. Some can be lower than 10%, like the Dangote facility we talked about, 5%. Some state funds are lower than 10%, depending on the MOUs we have with them. But for working capital, SMEs have challenges getting working capital from commercial banks. And when we were negotiating with the commercial banks, they said the risk must be properly priced. So they were not ready to give concessional interest rates because they say SMEs account for a high percentage of their non-performing loans. That how will they defend it before their board to say they're charging lower interest rates where the risk is very, very, very high? But under pressure from the MD, being a commercial banker himself, they were able to agree with us that, look, in national interest, we must all defend this country. We must all develop this country. We cannot be applying Oxford and Harvard policies and principles to what we are doing here all the time. So they agreed that whatever the MPR is, as set by the central bank, they will charge 6% above whatever the MPR is. So because the current MPR is 13%, The effective rate is 19%.
At the end of the day, appropriate government policies are pivotal to the success of any development bank, and Mr. Olaoluwa is optimistic the incoming government is up to the challenge.
It was indeed a great retreat. The Large Enterprise Directorate of the Bank of Industry is headed by Mr. Mohammed Al-Kali. Under his portfolio, linkages are provided between large corporations and small businesses, creating a sustainable cluster of interaction between these businesses. And this, when run effectively, can reduce risk and secure jobs. I caught up with Mr. Al-Kali in his office and posed a few questions about large enterprises, including how the Bank of Industry plans to help medium-scale enterprises who tend to get stuck at this stage move on to become bigger ones, and also how well the Directorate has worked in line with the Nigerian Industrial Revolution Plan. Mr. Mohammed Al-Kali, thank you so much.
Thank you, you're welcome.
How will you rate the Bank of Industry? I mean, it's been 6 months into the year. What has been done and what needs to be done?
Let me just start by referring you to our annual account of 2014, which was released in the last 2 weeks. You know, we have done well in that annual account. I don't want to repeat the figures. Our hope is to do more than what we did last year. From what we have done so far, we're trying to surpass what we did in 2014. Besides the financials, the bank is also going through a lot of transformation in terms of our processes and what we are doing. We are trying to be IT compliant as much as possible. And in doing that, we have already configured most of our processes to be IT-based, trying to eliminate all those manual things so that we'll be more efficient and more effective in our own business. So, all said and done, I'm sure our financial end of this year will be far, far better than what we have done in 2014, based on what kind of engineering we are doing now and kind of effort we are trying to put in to make sure that we are more efficient and more effective and provide quality service to our customers.
Now, it is obviously very important that small businesses don't remain small. They must grow well enough to become medium, from micro to small, then to medium, then eventually to large. These migrations are important for economic development. Is there anything your directorate is doing to make sure that small businesses does not remain small? I mean, the Bank of Industry generally. Is there anything you have in place to ensure that small businesses are able to move on to medium and then eventually to large businesses?
They need to understand each sector carefully, because even the migration you're talking about is very different. Let's take in solar minerals, an artisanal miner, whom I may call micro, growing into small or medium, have different tendencies and have different requirements than a small farmer in agro business who is farming tomato or whatever, who want to now start processing, blah, 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 blah. So the first thing is to understand the dynamics of each sector and what are the requirements of these SMEs. So there could be even a deliberate policy or the directive incentive to now make this value chain escalate as conveniently as possible. There could be some cherry picks on the line. If you see, you know, a particular SME or particular enterprise is doing efforts, they need to be encouraged to move forward. So for us to achieve what we are trying to say is probably we need to take all these SMEs separately and group them according to their own platforms and understand the dynamics. And then provide the necessary incentives. That's very important. Because an incentive you're going to give in agro might be different from what you're going to give in solid minerals. Probably The guy in the agro processing needs fertilizers on time. The guy in the solar mill has minority fertilizer for his own activities, right? Then, number two is infrastructure, both soft and the hard one. If people have power continuously, that they know reduce their cost by higher margin, they now concentrate on what to do next. I will give you an example of a barber, which, I mean, his main critical equipment is the caliper, which it was might not be 10,000 naira or even less. But because of no power, he has to buy a genset which is like 80,000 naira or so. So the cost of the accessories, that is the genset, even higher than the cost of the major machine he is used to make his business. So that's a challenge to that barber. So if that barber has sufficient power supply from the main, which is very cheaper, he will concentrate more on what to do it now. Probably he can focus on what kind of thing he will do to improve his own activities, probably more style, more this. So thinking will be different. So there must be sort of a deliberate activity to provide kind of. Then you have institutions to support this capacity building. Not all SMEs. It's not easy to say that we are going to prescribe the same thing in terms of capacity building. You may take 10 SMEs. Some of them are already enlightening in this area, or in certain areas there's a certain capacity that must be learned. They should know. So those kind of things has to be tailor-made, and by way in early linking them with appropriate corporate organization. Some of this is very easier because if you now go to a very highly structured corporate organization and you say you want to supply, the person says, okay, let's even train you to know what you're doing. They take you for 1 or 2 weeks training. They tell you, okay, this is our requirement. This. So if you want to supply in 1 week, must 1 week. This is how we pay our LPO. You don't come and just dump today and get tomorrow. So these are all part of the education problem. How to manage money, how to do this, blah, blah, all these things, So that SME will distinguish between what is profit and what is cash flow.
Who is eligible for large enterprise loans at the Bank of Industry?
Everyone, every corporate entity is eligible except our negative list. Any business that's based on speculation, we don't go into it. Like say you want to do gambling and it's speculative, we don't go into it. Armed business, we don't go into it.
With the dwindling price of crude oil around the world, agriculture appears to be the next in line for Nigeria and, of course, the solid mineral sector. What is the Large Enterprise Directorate doing to foster growth in the agriculture sector?
For us, we want to look at all the sectors as very important, but sometimes we tend to be biased on certain areas based on the impact they do create or the possible or prospective impact they would create. Out of our population, over 70% lives in the rural areas and they depend on agriculture. So we quite believe that anything you do in the agri space, either directly or indirectly, will have a lot of impact across. And that impact will go to where is highly needed at the bottom. My own personal concern is when you are creating impact, yes, you can create impact across, but let's create impact where it's going to be felt. You see, when you go to the bottom, this is where you can see abject poverty. Where you can see sedimented poverty. Sometimes I call it condensed because some people are already giving off and they don't know anything except the agriculture I talk about. If they are encouraged in that area, I mean, like in those days, a farmer can just farm. What you want is he has 5 bags of rice, he sells 2, keep 1 for feeding, and keep 2 for running if should in case something happen. And he's contented.
It is just 6 months to the end of the financial year, at least for the Bank of Industry. What big thing do you intend to achieve in your directorate?
Our role here is to see that Nigerian industrial landscape changes for the better. And we strive as much as we can to ensure that that happens and bring more smiles to the faces of Nigerians.
Mr. Mohammed Akai.
Thank you.
I hope you will revert back to the information on this episode of BOI Weekly whenever you need them. You can watch it again on youtube.com/channelsweb. Send us an email to boiweekly@channelstv.com for more inquiries, or visit boinigeria.com. That will be all on our program today. Thank you so much for watching. I am Adeshawa Josh, and I'll see you again.